and welcome. I am Amarachi Ubani. Tonight, Nigeria puts transparency into practice as NNPC opens bid for crude oil transaction. Supreme Court dismisses suit filed by Rivers State Governor Nyesom Wike challenging the authority of the tribunal to sit in Abuja. President Muhammadu Buhari arrives New Delhi, India to begin talks on terrorism. And Tanzania holds its most competitive election as 9 government ministers lose parliamentary seats to opposition party.
On business news tonight, International Monetary Fund releases new reports predicting dire economic consequences for Africa and at least 8 exporting countries.
And on sports news tonight, Nigeria's Segun Odegbami will not contest at next year's FIFA presidential election after failing to meet the deadline.
The Group Managing Director of the Nigeria National Petroleum Corporation, Dr. Ibe Kachukwu, says only credible and competent companies will be shortlisted for the sale and purchase of crude oil grades. Dr. Kachukwu notes there will be significant reforms in the crude allocation business. He says accountability and transparency will be enforced. He also told representatives of the 278 companies bidding for crude oil grades that the NNPC is prepared to upgrade its operations to meet international standards.
Before we get down to the business
as at midday Tuesday, the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation (NNPC) had received tenders from 278 companies bidding for the sale and purchase of only 26 crude oil grades in Nigeria. About 45 minutes after the submission of tenders was closed, the opening of the bid commenced, a process which the Group Managing Director of the corporation said he looked forward to its conclusion and the selection of the most competent companies to allow him focus on other urgent matters.
I can put relevant time to where the country needs me most. How do you find funds to continue JV explorations and production? How do you get discipline within our workforce to be able to benchmark the performance against the majors? How do you look at downstream and be able to benchmark our performance to those of our competitors out there? How do we ensure that payments into the FAC account are done on time and in the right volumes? How do we expand into the huge frontiers that this country, that the continent provides for operations of NNPC? There's so much important work to be done in this portfolio that when we spend time worrying about allocations of OPAs and crude, I just think it's a complete waste of the time of the GMD of this corporation.
Total sale of crude oil in Nigeria is set to be between $35 to $40 billion annually. Mele Kiari of the Crude Oil Marketing Division of the NNPC said this is grossly low compared with other oil-producing companies. To set things right, he said credible companies who will get to the end users in time must be brought on board.
It's impossible to evaluate this bid. What we are looking for is credible, competent, and capable people. And it's impossible to take these bids here and tell you are credible or competent. It's not the size of the document. But there are core things that we are looking for. What we are looking for is people who have the capacity to get the crude so that we don't have these overhang issues. They are financially stable and they are not going to hawk our crude.
The NNPC management sounded notes of warning to the bidding companies that no preferential treatment will be given in the selection process and no payment need be made to a third party or NNPC staff for the selection, as only credible and competent companies will be selected. Omelogo, Nadi Channels Television News.
The Supreme Court has thrown out an appeal filed by the Rivers State Governor Nyesom Wike challenging the constitution of the Rivers State Governorship Election Petition Tribunal panel. The appellant had objected that the court lacked merit to relocate the case to Abuja. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court has dismissed the petition filed by the Kebbi State PDP governorship candidate in the April elections, Bello Sarkin-Yaki against Governor Atiku Bagudu of the APC. Delivering the judgments, the Supreme Court declared Atiku Bagudu as the validly elected governor of Kebbi State. As comes out of the counsel to the petitioner, failed to prove beyond reasonable doubt that the election in Kebbi State was rigged. According to the presiding judge, Justice Walter Samuel, detailed reasons for the dismissal would be given by the Supreme Court on November 13th, 2015. Meanwhile, Governor Atiku Bagudu, in his reaction to the judgment, has commended the nation's judiciary for standing firm on the delivery of justice without fear or favor. It's been a season of election tribunals. The latest coming from the courtroom is that of Governor of Oyo State, Abiola Ajimobi. The Governorship Election Tribunal, sitting in Ibadan, the capital of the state, has upheld his victory after about 4 months of legal battle. The tribunal dismissed the petition filed by the former governor of the state and the candidates of the Accord Party in the April governorship election, Senator Rashid Ladoja. Senator Ladoja had challenged the validity of the victory of Ajimobi of the APC, but the Justice Muhammad Miyaki-led tribunal says the governor was duly elected. Meanwhile, Governor Ajimobi says he owes his victory at the polls to God and the people of Oyo State. Reacting more to the judgments, the governor said the verdict had laid to rest what he described as all the falsehood spread across the state beyond his opponents after his victory. Joining me now to discuss more on this is Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Chief Robert Clark. You're welcome to the News at 10.
Always my pleasure.
And the Supreme Court today dismissed Wike's appeal challenging the sitting of the tribunal in Abuja. What's your interpretation of this judgment?
You see, what was presented to the Supreme Court on appeal was who has the right to relocate a tribunal from a state to another state or to the federal capital. Is it the president of the Court of Appeal, or is it the tribunal itself sitting as a tribunal? Wike contended that the president of the Court of Appeal has no legal right under the law to have shifted the venue from Port Harcourt to Abuja. That if there was going to be a shift in the venue, the only person who could have done that, or the body could have done that, was the tribunal itself. And that was what the law provided for. The Court of Appeal refused to accept Wike's submission, probably basing it on the doctrine of necessity, which I'm not too clear about. And that was what brought the appeal to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court now this morning confirmed the judgment of the Court of Appeal and claimed that the president of the Court of Appeal has the power and discretion to change the venue if it was necessary so to do. That was the judgment of the Supreme Court this morning.
And while we await the outcome of the appeal, what happens to governance in Rivers State in the meantime?
You see, there is a problem many Nigerians will not have noticed. Last week, or this week, Wike's election was annulled by a tribunal. Another tribunal has just annulled almost 19 seats in the House of Assembly, including that of the Speaker. Now, the problem is this. If the tribunal were a final court, if there was no appeal, there will have been a constitutional crisis today in Rivers State. Because when a governor is removed from power, the Speaker takes over immediately and keeps watch for a particular period of time for a new election to be held. Now, the scenario being played out now is that neither the governor nor the Speaker will be available. Who now takes over if the tribunal's decision were a final decision? The quorum to pick another Speaker could not also have been formed because 19 of the members of the House have been removed by the tribunal. Fortunately, there is an appellate, allowed for. An appeal could be brought from the tribunal to the Court of Appeal. For the House of Assembly, that is the end of the road for an appeal. But for the governor, for the gubernatorial election, they still have a right after the Court of Appeal to go to the Supreme Court. So I believe we might not be engulfed in any constitutional crisis If the Court of Appeal quickly settles the issue of the House members and allows election to be held before the Supreme Court decides on the gubernatorial election, then there will have been in place a speaker and a House of Assembly that will take over in case Wike again loses at the Supreme Court.
As the tribunals wind down this week, that of Wike, Ajimobi, and all the others, what we've seen so far, especially as it appears that there have been conflicting judgments, some panels have endorsed, the use of card readers, and others did not. So, do card readers really play an important, aspect of this election petition tribunal in any way? Will it affect the turnout?
Well, card readers have played a significant role, but they have not played the major role as we thought they would play out. But you have to give this, because this is the first time we are using card readers in Nigeria. And at a stage during the presidential election, when there were failures by the card machines, the INEC boss now says, look, you can accredit, voters without the card. But I feel that with time, with technology, developing every day, we would have in place at the next election a card reading machine that will not be affected by any error or mistake. And I believe it's the best way forward for us in Nigeria.
Chief Robert Clark, thank you so much for joining us on the News at 10.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure.
I've been speaking with the Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Chief Robert Clark, on the election petition tribunals, especially as it regards the Rivers State governorship election. In part 2, after the break, World Bank delays information on spending of Abacha loot. Please stay with us.